Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals, to state senators, to mayors, to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities need it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about.
In today's episode, I talk with New Deal leader Colorado Representative Meghan Lukens. Meghan's a former high school government teacher who went from encouraging her students to get civically engaged to running for office herself. Meghan talks about representing her hometown in her first term in the legislature and approaching her work the Western Slope way by championing solutions and working across the aisle to get stuff done. We talked about some of the many accomplishments of the past legislative session in addressing affordability, from landmark action on property taxes to some of her own bills, like making it easier to build and operate childcare centers and increasing access to healthcare for rural communities. And since it's election season, we talked about what her voters care about most, spoiler alert, housing, and which of the 12 ballot measures in Colorado is most likely to drive voter turnout. I hope you enjoy. Representative Meghan Lukens, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you. It is a big year everywhere. There's lots going on. Of course, you are a representative in Colorado, representing a gorgeous area, I have to say, the Western Slope of Colorado. So I thought maybe I'd just give you a second to talk about your beautiful district and where you represent and, kind of what kind of community you work for in the legislature.
Yes, thank you so much for the question, and thank you for having me, Debbie. So I represent the most northwest corner of the state of Colorado. So I live in beautiful Steamboat Springs, but I do have 21 towns across my district. I represent 4 counties: Eagle, Routt, Moffett, and Rio Blanco counties. For those of you listening across the country, I represent some of the most amazing ski resorts in the country. So Steamboat, Beaver Creek, and Vail are 3 ski resorts in my district. But then I also have just amazing towns across my district that are all that people from all over the world want to come to for varying tourist activities. So a lot of people come to my district to go rafting or fishing or hunting or skiing or hiking. So I also have places like Meeker and Craig and Maybell and Hayden and Gypsum, and all of these towns are beautiful towns in my district. And this is also where I grew up. So I am honored to represent the communities that I grew up in now at the state capitol.
That is so cool. And you're making me want to come visit you. We should have done this in person. I don't know why we didn't think about that. But anyway, beautiful spot. Rural, I know a lot of your area is rural. I'm interested in kind of how you think about being a legislator that represents so many towns, so many small towns, so many rural towns. Like, what is that? It's different from some of the folks who obviously represent downtown Denver, of course. So kind of like, what's your experience been in your first term in the legislature representing a more rural area of Colorado?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Debbie. And you're more than welcome to come up to Northwest Colorado anytime. So I represent what I call rural communities and resort rural communities. And so the way that I view this at the state capitol, the mountainous areas of Colorado is known as the Western Slope. And so when I'm at the state capitol, I operate with what I call the Western Slope Way. And so that is working together. That is advocating for our rural and resort rural communities. That's working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan manner with the other Western Slope legislators, and recognizing that while we all, in the state capitol in Colorado, we all represent Colorado, there are certainly some topics that are unique to the Western Slope, and us Western Slope legislators do, in my opinion, an effective job of sticking together, whether you are Democrat or Republican. So a few examples of ways that I uplift specific topics that are specific to the Western Slope is water is a great category. We are the headwaters come out of my district for the Colorado River. And so we are always looking at water conservation measures and water resiliency measures to ensure that we are upholding our part of the Colorado River Compact, especially since we are in the midst of a 22-year mega drought. Agriculture is one of the top economic drivers in my district, and so promoting agriculture is absolutely a top priority for me and my Western Slope colleagues. And then tourism. I serve on the Colorado Tourism Office Board, and recognizing the value of our ski tourism industry is one of our top industries in my district. And so kind of thinking with that lens is what I do. But also the Western Slopeway is operating with respect and dignity and kindness. And before getting elected, I was a social studies teacher at Steamboat Springs High School, and I specifically taught government, civics, AP government, and I would talk with students when we would do debates. I would say, you can challenge the idea, but you don't attack the person. And I still utilize that at the state capitol, where I treat my colleagues with respect and dignity, and we can have policy discussions and disagreement while still respecting each other as humans.
Yeah. I know that you're a former social studies teacher. I think you're in good company this election cycle with the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket, being a social studies teacher. So I want to come back to the legislature and talk a lot about, because you guys had a really epic legislative session this year, and I want to talk about some of the specifics of that. But since you mentioned it, going from social studies teacher, where you're teaching it, and I love what you were teaching your kids about how to disagree, how to debate. What did drive you to run for office yourself? How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was when I was a government teacher, my year-long essential question to students was, as a student, how can you be politically and civically engaged, and how does understanding our political systems help you to be engaged? So I would support kids in being politically engaged, no matter what political affiliation they identified with. I cared about kids being politically and civically engaged, especially because our young people have some of the lowest voter turnout rates amongst eligible voters across the country. And so by supporting kids to be politically engaged, I knew that would be helpful in increasing voter turnout rates, and also helpful to the success of our democracy. I believe that in order for our democracy to be successful, people need to participate. And so I would talk about that with students, and we'd talk about why do young people have low voter turnout rates? Why does the United States have low voter turnout rates? Does our democracy truly function if half of our eligible voting population is not actually participating? And we would ask these questions and engage in these conversations. But then in addition to that, students started to become more politically and civically engaged because they wanted to. And that can come in a lot of different forms, whether that's actually working with a political party or being civically engaged with a passion project in the area that gives back to our community. So I supported students in being more politically and civically engaged. And I said, well, you know what? If I'm going to talk the talk, I should walk the walk. And so I became more politically engaged myself and started getting involved with our local Democratic Party, and just started volunteering and being involved with campaigns and elections. And at that time, my predecessor, who now is our state senator, Dylan Roberts, but at the time he was state representative, he was first elected when I believe he was 29 years old. And at this time, I saw a lot of young people started to get elected across the country. And I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew that young people could get elected, but I hadn't really seen it before. And so when at the time, State Representative Dylan Roberts decided to run for the state Senate, I decided that I felt I had something to contribute, and said, I think that we need more teachers in the Colorado State Legislature, and decided to throw my hat in the race for House District 26. And so I was elected in 2022, but I announced my campaign in 2021.
Yeah. And we have to give a shout out to Dylan, who's also a New Deal leader, Senator Roberts. So we love working with him as well. It is, you are representing a swing district, right? You're representing a competitive district. There's not all that many across the country. So what do you think when you look back at your first election, like what was, what were some of the factors that you think led to your success getting elected to that seat?
Totally. Yes, this is a great question. So my district is one of the most competitive in the state of Colorado. By many metrics, it can be considered a 50-50 seat. So based on the math, it could go, the district could go either way. So if you're going to run in House District 26, you have to work really hard. And in 2022, I certainly worked really hard. And now that I'm running for re-election, I am still working hard. As far as what was successful about my race in 2022, one, it's that I ran a positive campaign about myself, explaining what I hope to do for the people of House District 26, and be positive, forward-thinking, and solutions-oriented. I also ran on being a teacher. And like I said, I think we need more teachers in the state legislature. And the voters of House District 26 agreed with that. In the state of Colorado, we have some of the lowest education funding in the entire country. And I saw the impacts of that firsthand as a teacher. And that was something that I went to the state capitol to solve, to eliminate things like the budget stabilization factor, which has really been suffocating K-12 funding in the state of Colorado. And we successfully eliminated that this last legislative session. But in addition to that, campaigns come down to, especially campaigns in state house races in rural seats, it comes down to meeting as many people as you possibly can. So I personally knocked 5,500 doors in rural Colorado, and our doors are pretty far apart, and our towns are far apart. It takes me a while to even drive to the turf where I'm door knocking. My campaign knocked 24,000 doors, and I had such amazing conversations with people across Northwest Colorado. And just tried to maximize my listening and learning. And now that I'm in the state capitol, I use those conversations at the doors to be the best representative I can be. Like I said, as a government teacher, I taught about the power of a representative democracy. And I believe that means representing the values of the people that you are serving. And in my opinion, the best way to learn what is important to the people that you're serving is by asking them and talking to as many of them as you possibly can. And I really felt like I did that in my first race in 2022. And I'm back out there door knocking now with less than a month before Election Day, and still just having such great conversations with folks. So thank you to my constituents for being willing to have such great conversations and tell me what is important to you, because it guides everything that I do at the state capitol.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's been any change from like what you were hearing 2 years ago to now that you're running again? Have the issues changed? Has the tenor of the conversations changed, given that we're, all feeling this pressure cooker of the national political, dialogue? Like, is it, or does it still feel like they care about the same things and, want the same things?
Sure. The number one issue that I heard about at the doors in 2022, and I'm still hearing about the doors in 2024, is the affordable housing crisis. Another issue that I hear about specifically if you have kids is lack of early childcare opportunities. I think that obviously now, like when I ask voters what issues they will be thinking about when voting this year, a lot of them talk about that they are mostly paying attention to the presidential election. So that's obviously different from 2022. But otherwise, like the issues are usually affordable housing, early childcare, affordability overall, water, like I said, is a big one in my district. Education as well comes up a lot. So I do think that the issues are are similar because they're big issues that we have made progress on, but there's still more work to be done because they are such big issues. But yes, definitely hearing about the presidential race a lot this year too.
Is absolutely. You know what? I just want to underscore something you said. I do this podcast a lot. I talk to a lot of people. I mean, housing is the first thing that everybody says, and it doesn't matter where you live. And and I think some people don't think of it as a rural issue. They, and so I'm so glad you said that, because I think that it really is every single area, red, blue, purple, rural, urban, suburban. Like, it's housing affordability is actually, and good for the vice president, frankly, for making it such a cornerstone of her campaign, because she's right. That's what people are talking about, frankly.
Oh, absolutely. And I know, I mean, in my district specifically, our rural resort communities have been facing this crisis for a really long time. And what I say, and I know that my fellow elected officials that represent tourist towns across the country feel is specifically in my district, in places like Vail, Steamboat, and Beaver Creek, like basic housing supply and demand does not work in my district because we have never-ending demand. Because people want to come here, they want to have second homes, they want to have short-term rentals here, which is certainly a component of our economy, but also supporting the families and working people that live and work here is also definitely essential. So it's definitely something that is impacting our entire country right now. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely right. So, you get to the legislature, you're a teacher, education is important to you. You guys and housing is important to you. You did a lot of things this legislative cycle. So I want to make sure we get some time to talk about that. One in particular was the property tax issue that you guys tackled. Huge issue. I was reading back, doing my homework, and it's like calling it the property tax wars, right? I think there were some ballot initiatives being threatened to put on, but you came together in a bipartisan way to do something about that. So tell us how that went.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So to kind of give a bit of background information, specifically in the state of Colorado, in 2020, the voters decided to eliminate what was called the Gallagher Amendment, which created caps on our property taxes. We as a state said that we needed to address property taxes after the Gallagher Amendment was repealed. But as we all know, it was 2020 and there was also the pandemic. And so all of our elected officials across the state were focused on getting our state and our economy through the pandemic. And so we were working hard in the space of property taxes and also trying to navigate the pandemic. And so what happened was people living in Colorado saw their property taxes dramatically increase. And when we already are feeling a pinch at our pocketbooks, this had a huge impact on people. And so property taxes became the number one issue that I heard about at town halls. And this was the number one issue I heard about once I was elected. So I heard about it at town halls. I heard about it in conversation. I heard about it on aisle 4 of the grocery store, which basically is a town hall at this point because aisle 4 is the best aisle. And that's like representing small towns, right? It's like everywhere you go, you get to have great conversations with people. I have great conversations with constituents at my gym all the time too. This is what I love about representing small towns. So we knew as a state legislature that we had to do something about property taxes. And what we did in 2023 was, I guess the other thing that I have to flag is that in Colorado, anything that has to do with changing taxes or increasing our tax structure has to be approved by the voters because we are under what's called TABOR, Taxpayer Bill of Rights. So we as a state legislature in 2023 brought forward an option to decrease property tax valuation assessments, but it had to be approved by the voters in the form of Proposition HH. So in November of 2023, the voters said that they did not like Proposition HH. So we tried to fix property taxes in 2023. Voters said, no, we don't like this option. So then we had to come back to the drawing board in 2024, and we created a property tax commission to really study how we could address property taxes. Because the other thing about property taxes that we all know that, first of all, property taxes are local government, are used by our local government, and and property taxes fund essential services that we all rely on essential services like our school districts, our fire districts, our water districts, our paramedic districts. Obviously our school districts are paid for by taxes, but sometimes you don't necessarily think about your fire district or your paramedic district until there's a crisis, and then all of a sudden you really want your paramedic to arrive. God forbid that happen. But so all of these things are essential services. And so in 2024, we went back to the drawing board as a state legislature through the Property Tax Commission to hash out a bipartisan property tax solution to decrease property tax valuation assessment rates, and also partner with the state government to backfill our essential services using the state budget to ensure that our school districts, fire districts, water districts, paramedic districts, et cetera, are getting the funding that they deserve. However, we passed that at the end of the 2024 legislative session, but the governor actually called us back to a special session a few weeks ago because there were 2 ballot measures on the 2024 ballot in Colorado to cut property taxes even more. And the group that was bringing that ballot measure, or those 2 ballot measures, said that they wanted a special session to decrease property taxes even more, or else this would go to the voters. And obviously, we as a state government see the budget that we approve every year, and we knew that those 2 ballot measures would absolutely gut our state budget, our school district funding, our special districts funding, and we knew that those are things that we rely on, and we could not run a balanced budget as constitutionally required by the Colorado Constitution while abiding by those ballot measures. So in order to reach another compromise, we did have a special session a few weeks ago where we decreased property taxes even more while ensuring that our special districts would be funded. So I have no idea if you followed that, because there was like 4 different iterations of this story. But yes, property taxes have been quite the topic of conversation here in Colorado.
Yeah, well, no, I thank you there was a lot in that. That was super interesting. It's also, I want to point out too, I'm familiar with Tabor. It's such a unique thing to Colorado. We could do a whole hour long just explaining Tabor and how interesting that is and how interesting it makes legislators' jobs there, unlike anywhere else in the country. But we'll table that for another conversation. But it's super, yeah. But at the end of the day, you guys, you did make housing more affordable for your constituents, right? And so that was super exciting that got through. And I've been interested in how you've been talking about affordability generally. I feel like you've done a really great job of packaging up or explaining to your voters a lot about what you've been able to do across different areas, whether it's schools or childcare or housing and other places, to try to address affordability issues that you're hearing about from your constituents. I actually read a bunch of your monthly letters that you write to your constituents. They're so good. I think social studies teachers, so good. They're like so helpful and great summaries of what was happening in the legislature and why it matters to your constituents. So maybe just talk a little bit about, you were able to get some stuff done yourself as a freshman legislator, which is very impressive. You had some stuff on water. You did some really great stuff on childcare, making it easier to build and operate childcare centers in a state that apparently like over 50% live in childcare deserts, I think, or something. So tell me about kind of your approach, again, about kind of thinking about affordability, but also like how you were able to be successful as a freshman legislator getting things passed.
Debbie, you've done your research.
Well, it's impressive. It's super impressive.
Thank you. So there was a lot in that question.
There was a lot in that question. I did what do you call it? Like, you're only supposed to do single subject ballot initiatives. I just did I violated the single subject question rule on a podcast. So first tell me about affordability. Why is that so important?
Part A, Part B,
Part C. Yeah, Part A.
Okay. So before I get into that, I just actually want to comment on the columns that I write each month. And I just want to say this is what I love about being a rural legislator is I have 4 newspapers in my district that are very well read by my constituents. And so I touched base when I was first elected. I touched base with my editors at these 4 newspapers, and said, we came to an agreement that I could write a monthly column about what is happening at the state capitol. So I do put a monthly column in my 4 newspapers, and they are very well read by my constituents. And I work really hard on them because I think it's a great way to communicate what we are doing at the state capitol. But we also, we have a lot of different news sources in my district. The radio is also a really big category in my district, as a way to get information out to constituents. So just shameless plug for supporting media. My mom is also a journalist, and so I just love supporting media whenever I can, because I think it's an essential part of our democracy.
Yeah. Well, an important point too, as a rural legislator, like you said, you have a bigger district. People are farther and far between. It's really an important point you're making. So I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
So affordability. So when talking about affordability with constituents, I talk about what we have done over the past 2 years and then what I hope to do if reelected. But in addition to that, when it comes to affordability, I believe that it kind of falls into short-term solutions and long-term solutions. So a few bills that I've worked on over the past 2 years to address affordability falls under the umbrella of our workforce shortage in the state of Colorado. And part of the reason that we have a workforce shortage, especially in my district, is because people cannot afford to live here. And the top 2 reasons why people cannot afford to live here is our affordable housing crisis and our lack of early childcare. So one of the first bills that I passed in 2023 alongside fellow New Deal leader, State Senator Dylan Roberts, was a bill to allow the building of affordable housing on state-owned land. A proof of concept for that is in my district. It's an area that is owned by the Colorado Department of Transportation in this section in Eagle County called Dowd Junction. And if CDOT wants to build affordable housing for their employees on that land, I believe that they should be able to do so. And so this bill that we passed in 2023 allowed for that. So that's one specific bill that I've worked on to unlock land parcels when it comes to affordable housing. And then in the early childcare space, I've worked on a few bills in the early childcare space, especially since I sit on the education committee. And one of the bills that I passed was in regards to developing early childcare facilities and developing those early childcare facilities near where people live and work. So you are right with your stat, 53% of rural Colorado is an early childcare desert. And we know that that is one of the increasing early childcare is one of the best things that we can do to support our economy and support our working families. I can personally think of 3 friends off the top of my head that are new mothers that were teachers in our school district that had to quit their jobs as teachers because they could not find early childcare for their little ones. So our early childcare crisis is caused by 3 reasons. 1, lack of affordable childcare. 2, lack of qualified early childcare teachers that get paid what they deserve to be paid. And 3, lack of physical facilities, like the lack of the actual facilities. And so this bill was to target category number 3, which was actually building those facilities. But there's obviously more work that needs to be done in regards to actually supporting our teachers that are working in our early childcare facilities and paying them what they deserve, but then also ensuring that our families have affordable options. So I guess those are 2 bills that I've worked on, but as a state legislature, we have worked in the affordable housing space by allowing for accessory dwelling units to be built on people's private property, but also allowing for people to actually live in those accessory dwelling units, also known as mother-in-law suites. And I believe that that is a great, while it's not necessarily a single family home, it helps address our issue if we need a spectrum of housing options for people to live in, so people can rent from those places, or sometimes like family can live in those mother-in-law suites. And then we also have been utilizing what we call Proposition 123 funds, which is funding that was earmarked by the voters of Colorado to be spent on affordable housing projects. So I have been partnering with our community leaders in this space, Yampa Valley Housing Authority, Habitat for Humanity Vail Valley, just to name a few, to actually utilize those funds and build affordable housing, as well as increasing options for creative housing solutions like modular homes, as well as more dense projects like single family duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, etc. And then in the early childcare space, we as a state have been investing in universal pre-K, in expanding that program to ensure that 4-year-olds have childcare options, but we also need to really invest in our infant and toddler categories as well, because those are certainly our largest shortfalls. Looking forward, in my district, the largest category of people that are leaving my district are people between the ages of 25 and 45, and that is our working families. Those are our folks that want to contribute to our community in a multitude of ways, but they cannot afford to live here because they can't find affordable housing options and early childcare options. So expanding the programs that we have at the state capitol to address those needs. I believe that the next category we also need to focus on is the rising cost of homeowners insurance, or the inability for people to have homeowners insurance, especially because a lot of the areas in my district are prone to wildfire. And so that is becoming a cost that's impacting people. And then recognizing that the two biggest costs that families are paying right now is affordable housing, or is just housing, period, because it's not affordable, and childcare if they're able to find it. And then just supporting our businesses as well, especially supporting our businesses in these categories where we have workforce shortages, and like recognizing what groups of people we have shortages in. I passed a bill called Opportunity Now to support construction workers and expanding our construction worker talent pipeline. I passed a bill to support our rural healthcare workers and expanding the rural healthcare initiative talent pipeline, because these are two categories of people that we need workers in my communities. So there is a lot of great work happening, but a lot of work that still needs to happen. And I'm so proud of the community partnerships that I have. Everything that I've done at the state legislature is through community partnerships, partnering with local elected officials, state elected officials, federal elected officials, as well as our business and industry leaders across the district. Everything that I do is community driven, and I'm just so grateful that I have such a politically engaged community that can be right by my side as we are getting these bills passed through the state legislature.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I mean, maybe my part B question on that was this a kind of how you were able to be successful, that those partnerships sound critical, and then to pull something back earlier that you said, your bipartisan nature, presumably, that you've been able to team up with your other Western Slope legislators who care about the same things, I assume was really helpful in being able to get stuff across the finish line too.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Yeah. The main people that I work with in the state capitol are certainly the Western Slope legislators, and that's Republicans and Democrats alike. And then I have a joke with my 3 other colleagues that represent the 4 corners of Colorado. So we call ourselves the 4 Corners Caucus, because I'm in the northwest corner of the state, and my colleague in the southwest corner, and then my colleague in the southeast corner, and my colleague in the northeast. And 2 of us are Democrats, 2 of us are Republicans, but we certainly like to work together. And so it's a matter of, again, listening and learning to the needs of the community, partnering with community leaders to understand what the problem is and what potential solutions are, partnering with other people in the state capitol who are impacted by these same things. One of my favorite bills that I've worked on was a bill that I partnered with my colleague from the exact opposite corner of the state, the southeast corner of the state, but he and I both represent coal transitioning communities. And so we've worked on some bills together to support our coal transitioning communities in navigating that transition and figuring out how to be forward thinking about what energy solutions we can work on, because energy is such a part of the culture and community in my 2 coal transition communities of Hayden and Craig. So we're looking at options to support those transitioning communities as far as energy solutions and energy opportunities that are reliable and affordable. But so it's a matter of listening to community leaders, partnering with local elected officials, and especially in regards to what they need and how the state can support them, as well as partnering with our federal government officials to see how we can all work together to support Colorado. But it also just comes down to being a good person, I guess, and operating with kindness and transparency and working in an ethical manner, and being willing to compromise and collaborate and saying like, okay, I understand that this is an issue to you and this might, and there's a way that I can address this issue in the bill that I'm working on, or I can amend the bill to make it more amenable to what you are trying to do, and really like listening to all those stakeholders and just having an effective stakeholding process to make these bills the best that they can be. I also believe that bipartisan policy is good policy because I think that having a diversity of perspectives working on these bills just makes the bill stronger because, I might read the bill with my perspective, but a colleague that I'm working on the bill with might have a different perspective. And that perspective is also valuable because they're also representing their 90,000 constituents. So that's kind of the mindset that I've gone into the state capitol, and it seems to have been effective over the past 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It has. It's really an impressive showing your first 2 years. Congratulations on so much great work. And before I lose you, it probably would be remiss not to, we're talking right before an election year, of course, an election, and Colorado has a bunch of ballot initiatives this year, everything from choice to a ranked choice voting bill that's going to be before ballot initiative before the voters. So I'm just kind of curious about how you're feeling. I'll kind of make it a very broad question for you, just about kind of whether what's bubbling up for people. What are you, which of the ballot initiatives are you thinking you're getting the most attention? What do you think in particular might be going to be driving voters to the polls come November, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do have right next to me my blue book, and I don't think every state does this, but I just want to demonstrate that Colorado has what's called the blue book. And my first thing that I would like to say to people of Colorado is check out the blue book this year. There's a lot of really good information in there. And what our blue book does is it explains every ballot measure, explains what the ballot measure would do, and it explains what supporters of the ballot measure say, what opponents of the ballot measure say, and there's some really helpful information in this ballot measure. In the blue book. We have 12 ballot measures in our 2024 ballot in Colorado. And the number one thing that I'm hearing about from constituents is, oh my gosh, why are there 12 ballot measures? So in Colorado, we do have in comparison to other states, we do have a easier process to get ballot measures on the ballot. And that is evident this year with our lengthy ballot this year. So in Colorado, we also have the second highest voter turnout rates in the country. And so we do have a lot of people that vote this election, that vote every year. My first request is be sure to vote down ballot because I am a down ballot race. But I know that navigating the ballot measures is going to be a lengthy process. Fortunately, in Colorado, we have an all mail-in voting system. Obviously, you can go in and vote in person if you choose to do so, but that certainly helps when voting on a long ballot that you can be at your house in your pajamas filling out your ballot while also conducting research because some of these are pretty hefty. So just looking at the ballot, yes, we have Amendment 79 is a ballot measure to codify in the Constitution the constitutional right to abortion. In Colorado, we do have the Reproductive Health Equity Act, which is in state statute protecting access to abortion. But because what we have seen happening in other states where women are losing access to reproductive care, we in Colorado want to ensure that Colorado remains a beacon of hope when it comes to women seeking reproductive care. And the best way to ensure that that is protected is by amending our Constitution. So that is Amendment 79. That is a ballot measure that I will be proud to be supporting. And And then we have a wide range of ballot measures as well. You mentioned that Proposition 131, which is a ranked choice voting for general elections ballot measure. So that will be, that one is, has a lot already, a lot of advertisements already coming out across Colorado in that. So Proposition 127 prohibits bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. I'm opposed to this ballot measure because I do not support ballot box biology. I believe that wildlife management should be left to wildlife management experts at Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And so it's important that, especially on the Western Slope, those wildlife populations are adequately managed. And I know that our folks at CPW are effectively managing those populations. And so those are just a few of the ballot measures, but I can go over others if there's questions, but my main recommendation is for people to start doing their research because ballots get mailed out on October 11th in Colorado, and there are a lot of ballot measures on this year's ballot.
Well, it's good it's great advice. I live in a very ballot initiative heavy state too in California, so I completely understand. We also do get a book, and it is important to do your research. But it sounds like since you raised the choice one first, that's something that people is on top of minds for people in Colorado, and will be something that people are anxious to be able to vote on. It sounds like.
Yes, definitely. Lots of energy around that ballot measure to ensure that is codified into our state constitution.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, Meghan, it was so great to talk to you. I do want to come visit the Western Slope now that we've talked. Maybe we can sneak in a skiing trip, New Deal skiing trip somehow.
We could have a New Deal conference in one of my ski resort towns. I'm just saying.
I like that. I love that idea. Let's do that. But it's been so great. And again, congratulations on an incredible first legislative session where you and your colleagues did so much good. And of course, Governor Polis, who we also love there in Colorado. So, but thanks for everything doing. Good luck getting through the final stretch. And just thanks for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, Debbie, thank you so much. Thank you to the New Deal Leaders team. And this was so much fun. So I appreciate the time, and I'm honored that you selected me to be on the podcast.
Of course. We'll talk soon, I hope.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. Thanks to the team at New Deal for producing this episode. We encourage you to bring honor to public service, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars are used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.